Normally when you're brewing your own beer, it's going to take you between 6 and 12 hours of actual effort to get through the process. Maybe longer or shorter depending on your process and your equipment. Well, Morebeer is coming out with something called the Flash Brewing Kit, which allows you to get very good beer, they say, in about 10 minutes of actual overall effort. They actually sent me one of these things, and today I'm gonna really put it through its paces and we're gonna find out how good of a beer can we actually get out of it. For the record, let's set some things straight. Morebeer did not pay me anything. In fact, they didn't even tell me they were sending this to me until it arrived on my doorstep, and then I got an email being like, hey, by the way, you got this. There's no binding contract, there's no terms, there's no payment, there's nothing going on here between me and Morebeer other than the affiliate link in the description box where you can buy standard ingredients if you wish to, or this Flash Brewing Kit if you wish to. Based on this video though, you may or may not actually wish to buy one of these kits. By just sending it direct to my door without asking anything of me, or trying to negotiate a payment or anything, they have told me that they're very confident in their product. So we'll see what happens when I make it. Let's set a few things straight here though. What this is the same vein as Pinter, as Igulu, as Mr. Beer. It's any of those instant beer kits that is kind of geared more towards the newer home brewer, somebody who's trying to get into the hobby. What it is a very low level of effort to get a final fermented product at the end of the day. And we'll find out just how good that is in this video. In the Flash Brewing Kit, you're getting a dehydrated powdered wort extract. This is not malt extract, it's wort extract. It's been boiled with hops. It's got something in it to kind of give a specific character to the beer you're trying to make with it. On top of that, you're getting some cryo hops, you're getting liquid hop extract, and you're getting Flash Brewing yeast. The concept behind it is very simple. You just collect 5 gallons of water, dump all of those ingredients in, and let it do its thing for 2 weeks or so. To be completely honest with you, I'm actually really skeptical going into this process. All of these instant beer kits have all been underwhelming. They've been disappointing for the most part. The best one I've had so far has been Pinter, which has produced a drinkable beer. I wouldn't say it's amazing, but we'll see what this one does. Now, they've been very honest and open about this not being intended as a replacement for all grain brewing. I think that's a very good thing to say because other companies can be deceptive in their marketing, and that is not the case here. And that being said, it gives me a good frame of reference for what to expect for the final product, so we'll see what happens with that. As a dad to a 1-year-old, I have very, very little time available to brew. I've been doing as much brewing as I can this year, but it's been really hard to keep the channel moving, and to be honest, I've brewed a lot less than I used to. So something like this that requires 10 minutes of overall effort, if I've already got all the gear, actually is very appealing, and I'm hoping that I can actually get something good out of it on the other end. And if so, maybe I'll get more of these in the future and we'll talk about more of them. This is the Citrus Session Pale Ale, and I'm interested to see what happens with this recipe because it leans really heavily into the hops, and we're not boiling any of these hops. We're not isomerizing any alpha acids. We're not gonna get any bitterness out of it. So the hop shot just being tossed into the wort should be interesting. This is definitely unlike any other beer kit I've ever made, and it'll be fun, although I'm very curious.
Starting out, you're gonna open up the box, gonna find a handy instruction sheet that covers pretty much everything you need to know about making this beer. Following that, we have a bag of powdered wort extract and also a couple hops here. In my case, with this recipe kit, it's 2 ounces of Cryo Citra and also a liquid hop extract. Lastly, there's also the Flash Brewing yeast, which is a dry yeast. I'm not sure exactly what strain of yeast this is. My thoughts initially kind of go towards a neutral Kveik yeast, potentially based on the fermentation range that's given. So the first thing you need to do is pick your favorite fermenter and sanitize it. In my case, I'll be using my Anvil bucket fermenter, which is a cheap stainless steel fermenter. It's quite reliable. So just adding in some Star San and letting that sit there, run through the ball valve, making sure all the surfaces are sanitary and clean. Then we go on to collecting some water. So the next thing we'll do is collect 5 gallons of brewing water. Morebeer recommends either distilled water, reverse osmosis water, or clean spring water for the best results. I have reverse osmosis water in my system in my basement, so I'm gonna go ahead and just use that. We're collecting a total of 5 gallons of water, but I'm splitting it up into 1 chunk of 3 gallons and 1 chunk of 2 gallons. We're going to put the first 3 gallons into the fermenter, and then we're going to start adding all of our stuff into it. So starting out with my powdered wort extract, that's going to get opened up and dumped in. They recommend not to stir this up. I think the cited reason here is to avoid any sanitation concerns, which I think that makes sense. While this is a little bit weird for me, it does eventually kind of break down and dissolve and kind of homogenize itself over time, but don't expect that to happen right away. The next thing we'll add is the liquid hop extract from the syringe that just gets squirted in. And then I'm going to add in my hops. This is the 2 ounces of Citra Cryo hops. Those, again, just get dumped right in on top of the powder that's floating on the water. And then lastly, we'll add in our dry brewer's yeast here, the flash yeast. That again just gets dumped in on top of the water. And that's really all there is to it. Now we're going to add our last 2 gallons of water, let that mix in, and then without stirring it, we're just going to pop the lid on the fermenter and put it into a stable place to ferment. I'm going to use my chest freezer converted fermentation chamber for this, and I'm choosing to ferment this at a stable 69 degrees for the next 2 weeks. The fermentation temperature range for this yeast actually has quite a lot of wiggle room here. You can get it to go pretty high actually overall, and I'm choosing not to do that because I just haven't used this yeast before. I don't know what strain it is. I don't want to take any risks by fermenting too hot and creating any unnecessary off flavors, so I'm just going to leave this one on the low end of the temperature spectrum, which should result in a very clean tasting beer. Normally at this time before fermentation begins, I would take an original gravity measurement, but because this is not mixed up or homogenized in any way, there's no reliable OG measurement to take here, so we're just going to have to operate on an assumption that Morebeer estimates that this is about 5% ABV at the end of the process, so it's probably like a 1040 to 1050 OG. I'm not going to worry about it too much. Fermentation was complete in about 10 days at this temperature, and it reached a very, very dry final gravity of 1004. As soon as I confirmed that final gravity, I transferred it all into a sanitized keg, added some CO2 pressure, and started to carbonate the beer. It was ready to serve shortly thereafter. The beer comes in at an estimated 5% ABV and an estimated 30 IBUs, according to Morebeer. And it is pouring a hazy, very, very pale yellow color, basically a straw color, and it has a nice little white cap of foam on it that does not stick around forever, but does leave a little layer on the surface, and surprisingly leaves a little bit of lacing there as well. So it's visually a pretty solid looking beer.
All right, so now let's go in for aroma. Aromatically, this beer is very, very light on the aroma. There is not much there, but what is there is certainly a little bit of a citra note. I get no malt, like the citrus kind of note coming through from the hops itself. Specifically, it'd be kind of like a little bit of like a tangerine grapefruit. That's about it though. I mean, it's very, very hard to pick up. It's pretty light, which I think is to be expected, to be fair. Let's go in now for mouthfeel. So again, mouthfeel on this one, to be expected, is very light, bordering on watery. It's very dry. The finish on it is extremely refreshing, don't get me wrong. I actually carbonated this quite highly, so it's more like a saison now, almost in the way that it feels in the mouth. The mouthfeel on this is not really like soft and full-bodied like you might expect with a hazy hop-forward beer, but it's light and it's reasonably smooth. I wouldn't say there's any hard edges on it. It's not, like, it's, for what it is, it's a very refreshing beer. And now for the real thing that you came to this video to find out. Does this taste like a real beer? What is the flavor experience like? Let's find out. So, to answer that question, yes, this does taste like a real beer. So I do get loads of citra hop character in this, and I get a bit of a malt character in this. Very, very light one. It's not too significant, to be honest with you, but this is a pale ale, and that's kind of what the point of the beer style is it's a hop forward beer. And it's very light, it's very refreshing, it's very simple. And that's really all there is to the flavor. It's not hop water, don't get me wrong. It's not just like straight up hops and nothing else. There is a little bit of malt character in here. It does not taste like an all grain beer does, to be honest with you. And that's maybe my personal bias talking, but it's really pretty good overall. And it's something that I could absolutely crush. Yes, it's very simple. Yes, it's not really the world's most flavorful, most mind-blowing pale ale that ever was created, but for the level of effort that I put into this, it's actually really astonishing what I got out from the other side. The total amount of work that I put into this beer, 10 minutes of brewing it, and 10 minutes of kegging it, and then putting it on gas for a few days, and all of a sudden, this is what I get out of it. Like, that's a huge reward for the amount of effort that I put in, which is very little. So, I'm happy with that. If I'm really trying to compare this to a full all grain brew that went from start to finish, I mashed, I boiled, I fermented, and I packaged. The criticisms that I have are that the hop flavor is lacking depth. It is all entirely dry hop flavor, and it does taste a little bit like hop water. You're kind of getting that like unboiled hop flavor in there. There's not that much bitterness to balance that out. It does taste a little green to me as well, but can't really find any yeast flaws. Really wish there was more malt backbone to this, malt character to it in general. But that's my personal preference talking. I really do wish there was more body to this. Now, everyone out there who's reviewed one of these things has got the exact same recipe, the Citra Session Pale Ale here. There are plenty of other kits that More Beer is selling, and I'm really curious to find out what a more malt forward style, like the Irish Red or the Hefeweizen that they sell in this format would taste like, because the hops and the level of hopping in this beer is really dominating the flavor. And I'm kind of curious what malt characteristics we can really get out of a dehydrated beer. So anyway, I'm curious. I might have to pick another one up for myself to see what happens with it. But overall, my verdict on this one is it's not the best beer that's ever been made. And you know, it's not, in my biased opinion, it's not really a replacement for all grain brewing, and I think I could probably make a better tasting beer on my own with an all grain process. But for the level of effort that I put into it, like I said, this is quite impressive, and it really just hits that spot of, I'm a busy dad, I've got no time to brew anymore, and this actually just works to get me 5 gallons of drinkable, tasty beer. Would I share this with everybody in my block? Probably not, but it's perfectly adequate for enjoying on my own, and it's quite a refreshing beer, and I'm quite happy with it overall. Amongst all those instant beers that you see all over the place now, from Pinter, from Igulu, from, you know, this flash brew here, this is without a doubt the best tasting beer that's been produced out of all of them. There is no doubt about that. I will stand behind that, and I'm actually pretty impressed with that. So let's talk about who this is meant for and who this is not meant for. This is not meant for people who actually want to get deep into the details of making their own beer, for people who want to brew their own recipes. This is not meant for people who want to spend a lot of time crafting the best possible version of a beer they possibly could. This is meant for people who want to drink their own beer and enjoy it and not put a ton of effort into it. It's meant for people who have zero time on their hands but still want to explore that hobby of home brewing and make something unique to themselves. And it's meant for people, I think, who are just getting into the hobby. Just like Pinter, just like Mr. Beer, these are introductory kits that really can make a big difference for people who are just getting started. I can't tell you the amount of people that got out of this hobby because the first few beers that they made were absolutely awful. And this is a great way to prevent that from happening, because these beers are kind of hard to screw up and they taste pretty good for what they are. And it's a great little springboard to get started. Best of all, you don't have to pay hundreds of dollars for a fancy device like an Igulu or a Pinter. You can just toss this into a plastic bucket or a steel fermenter and you're good to go. So no, it's not a replacement for all grain brewing, and I don't think it should be viewed that way, but it is a very interesting kind of evolution of where home brewing is going. And if you are just starting out making your own beer at home, this may be one of the best options to get yourself kind of started, see what you can make, see what you can do, And then from there, you can level up to extract or all grain if you wish to. Anyway guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you found it somewhat useful. If you picked up one of these kits, let me know what you thought of it. And let me know if you agree with my assessment of the overall beer. Please go ahead, hit that like button. Don't forget to comment down below and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you want to support the channel, please consider picking up a t-shirt like this one. You can find this design and plenty of others in my merchandise store, which is linked in the description box down below the video. I also have a Patreon there, and my patrons are the reason why I'm still able to keep this channel going. You guys have provided continuous support throughout the ups and downs of this year in terms of making content, so I really do appreciate your support. It has gone a very, very long way. If Patreon is not your thing though, I also have channel memberships, and there's the super thanks button. Both of those things are quick and easy ways to help support me, and they all go right back into the channel, so thanks if you're hitting those. I also have an Amazon store, which is also linked in the description box down below. You can find a ton of homebrewing equipment that's on Amazon that I recommend and have used. It's also where you can find the channel production equipment for everything there, if you're curious about that. And of course, if you want to follow me on more than just YouTube, I'm also active on Instagram and Facebook as The Apartment Brewer, so check those links out for some more frequent content. And if you're still watching at this point, thank you very much for watching the entire video. It means a lot to me, and definitely helps the video out in terms of making it more popular to the rest of YouTube. And so therefore, this one goes out to you guys, and I'll catch you in the next one. So until then, cheers.